Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, afternoon, evening, or night to Mr. or Mrs. Chairman of the session and also the examiner. Let me here introduce myself. I am Rian Rizki Ramadan with name 170962221 from the Officer Administration Education Study Program, Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Jakarta. Batch 2 2020 with my one supervisors, Mrs. Prof. Dr. CORRY YOHANA MM, and my second supervisors, Mr. MAULANA AMIRUL ADHA M.Pd. This is the final reports of the thesis that I have worked on with the title The Influence of Entrepreneurial Practice on Entrepreneurial Interest Stroke Entrepreneurial Readiness on SMKN 22 Jakarta students. Table of contents. There are 5 discussions contained in 5 chapters and included chapters number 1, Introduction, chapter 2, Literature Review, chapter 3, Research Methods, chapter 4, Result and Discussion, and last chapter 5, Conclusion and Advice. Chapter 1, Introduction. Background. Currently, people with vocational high school education graduates are the largest contribution to the employment rates in Indonesia, reaching 9.60% of the total unemployment rate in Indonesia, which has reached 5.83% or almost 8 million people. Then the second largest is followed by the community with graduates from SMA, Diploma 1, 2, 3, and 4, Strata 1, 2, 3, and 4, SMP, and SD, who have an average unemployment rate below 5.51%. In Southeast Asia or ASEAN, Indonesia can still be said to be the country with the lowest entrepreneurship rates. Minister of Cooperative and SMEs Teten Mesduki explained that Indonesia has not been able to reach the ideal ratio of the 3.95% of the total population in Indonesia, where several Asian countries, include Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand, with an entrepreneur rate of 3.47%. The data above is per research data conducted by researchers. The data above illustrates the low interest in continuing entrepreneurship after graduating of high school in SMKN 22 Jakarta students. The data show that as many 70.9% of students still have no or low interest in doing entrepreneurship. Then here are the results of the pre-research related to what factors can encourage entrepreneurial interest of students at SMKN 22 Jakarta. First, occupied by the entrepreneurial readiness factor with a figure of 78%, followed by entrepreneurial practice 76%, and self-motivation 74%, and the last, family environment 58%. This study tries to complement the gap in the previous research where not many research have met entrepreneurial readiness as a mediating variable for the influence of entrepreneurial practice on entrepreneurial interest. Based on the background of the problem and the prior research that has been done, the researchers is interested in the conducting research with the title The Influence of Entrepreneurial Practice on Entrepreneurial Interest Through Entrepreneurial Readiness of SMKN 22 Jakarta students. Research objective. Number 1. This study aims to calculate and analyze the influence of entrepreneurial practice on entrepreneurial interest. And number two, the study aims to calculate and analyze the influence of entrepreneurial practice on students' entrepreneurial readiness. Number three, the study aims to calculate and analyze the effects of entrepreneurial readiness on entrepreneurial interest. And number four, the study aims to calculate and analyze the indirect influence of entrepreneurial practice on entrepreneurial interest through entrepreneurial readiness. Next, chapter 2, literature review. Entrepreneurial interest or variable W. Definition. Entrepreneurial interest is a desire, determination, and courage in a person that affects entrepreneurial behavior to produce innovation and creativity with the aim of meeting the needs of both individuals and society in the future. Indicator number one, desire and availability in entrepreneurship. Number two, the desire to make ends meet. Number three, dare to take a risk. And last, the desire to continue to develop and innovate to develop the business created. Next, entrepreneurship practice variable X1. The definition, entrepreneurial practice is an activity in the learning process carried out with the aim of providing experience, forming creative, innovative attitudes, responsibility, and dedication in taking risks in entrepreneurial process. In addition, entrepreneurial practice is also an activity that introduces the behavior of an entrepreneur so that an entrepreneurial spirit is formed within oneself without any coercion from other parties. Then indicators. Number one, practical learning methods carried out. Number two, practical assistance. Number three, business plan making. Number four, business plan reports preparation, and the last, problem solving in the entrepreneurship. Next, entrepreneurial readiness or variable X2. The definition, entrepreneurial readiness refers to the mental abilities, forward orientation, risk-taking, and skill that individuals have to start a business. It can be strongly believed that individuals who already meet this criteria tend to be already and focus on achieving performance goals with goal results. Then indicators, number one, mental abilities, number two, forwards orientation, number three, risk taking, and number four, skills you have to start a business. Relevance research. Research conducted by Huang et al. 2021, entitled The Role of Entrepreneurship Policy in College Students' Entrepreneurial Intention, the Intermediary Role of Entrepreneurial Practice and Entrepreneurial Spirits. Lalu number two, research conducted by Farhan, entitled The Influence of Entrepreneurship Education and Entrepreneurial Practice on Entrepreneurial Readiness. The results of the analysis in this study show that there is a positive influence with a regression coefficient value of 0.350. For partial coefficient values obtained, T calculate 2.251. Here, the table 2.048 with the significance 0.032 on 0.050. And number three, research conducted by the Butar, entitled The Influence of Entrepreneurial Readiness on Creative and Innovative Entrepreneurial Interest for the Young Generation. And based on the result of the hypothesis test that has been carried out, it is known that the variables of entrepreneurial preparation has a positive effects. If the entrepreneurial readiness is high, the interest in student entrepreneurial will be high. Conceptual framework. Hypothesis development. Hypothesis 1. There is a direct influence between entrepreneurial practice on the entrepreneurial interest of SMKN 22 Jakarta student. Hypothesis 2. There is a direct influence between entrepreneurial practice on the entrepreneurial readiness of SMKN 22 Jakarta students. Hypothesis 3, there is a direct influence between entrepreneurial readiness and entrepreneurial interest of SMKN 22 Jakarta students. And hypothesis 4, there is an indirect influence between entrepreneurial practice on entrepreneurial interest through the entrepreneurial readiness of SMKN 22 Jakarta students. Chapter 3, Research Methods. Time and place of research. The time specified in the implementation and work on this research start from September 2023 to January 2024. And the location determined in this study is at SMK Negeri 22 Jakarta, which is located at Jalan Raya Condet number 12 RT 12 RW 3 Gedong Village Pasar Buah District S Jakarta City DKI Jakarta. Research designs. Number 1, methods. In this study, researchers chose to use quantitative research methods by collecting data through closed questionnaires and the form of questionnaires that allowed respondents to choose the right answers with their characteristics. Therefore, this study will use primary data obtained through questionnaires through Google Form to be processed using Smart PLS. Object of research. Number 1, population. In the study, the population used were all grade 10 students of SMKN 22 Jakarta on the competence of MPLB, BR, TKJ, and AKL. Expertise totaling 240 students. Sample, a total of 240 students become the affordable population in this study. Sampling in this study, researchers used Isaacs and Michael's table with an error rate of 5%. Based on the table, a minimum number of samples was found to be 135 with the following calculation. Data collection technique. The data collection technique that will be used in this study is to use a Likert scale with the aim of determining the length or shortness of the interval on a measuring instrument. Primary data will be used in this study obtained through interviews or survey with the help of Google Form online. Next, analysis techniques. This research used the structural equation model partial least square or SUMPLS analysis technique, which will be assisted by SmartPLS software. This research will be used carried with several stages, namely data analysis. The first stage is descriptive analysis of data, then continued with outer model measurement test and inner model structural test stage and hypothesis testing. Chapter 4, Result and Discussion. Respondent profile. It can be said that the characteristic of class 10 students from various majors at SMKN 22 Jakarta, when analyzed from their gender, explained male respondents were 48 students or 35% of the total respondents, while female respondents were 90 students or 65% of the total respondents. It can also be seen that the most respondents came from PKJ and AKL majors with 46 respondents with a percentage of 66% of the total respondents. Then continued age with a percentage of 34% of the total respondents. Variable description analysis. Entrepreneurial practice. The highest mean value is found in the PK09 instrument, and the highest mean value is found in the instrument KB 0.7, and the highest mean value is found in the MB013 instrument, and the lowest mean value is the main MB instrument 7.7. Author model. Variance inflation factor or FIF. Based on the result of the FIF that's above, we can know that each indicator on the variables of entrepreneurial interest, entrepreneurial readiness, and entrepreneurial practice has a value smallest than 10.0. The results of 93 can be interpreted that the model carried out in this study does not have multicollinearity. Convergent validity. Based on the results of the testing author model in the picture, on the sets using SmartPal as version 4, it can be seen that all results of loading factor value on all variable, both independence variable of entrepreneurial practice, intervening variables or mediating of entrepreneurial readiness, and variable type to entrepreneurial interest have a value of higher than 0.7. So it indicates that all constructs in this study are valid. Next, discriminant validity. Based on the result of discriminant validity testing, it can be seen that the construct value has greater value when compared to the cross-loading value other constructs, AV and GR. Average variance accurate state or AV. We can know the result of the A value on the entrepreneurial readiness variable of 0.779, then on the entrepreneurial interest variable of 0.749, and on the entrepreneurial practice variable of 0.711. Each of these, the three variable has met the requirements in achieving discriminant validity higher than 0.5. Composite reliability. We can know the result of the value on the entrepreneurial readiness variable of 0.977, then on the entrepreneurial practice variable of 0.967. Each of these three variables has met the requirements and reliability because it has a value of higher than 0.7. Cronbach's alpha. We can know the results of the value on the entrepreneurial interest, entrepreneurial readiness variable of 0.974, then on the entrepreneurial interest variable of 0.969, and on the entrepreneurial practice variable of 0.963. Each of these three variables has met the requirements and reliability because it has a value of higher than 0.7. Inner model. Test statistic and error score. Test statistic. It can be seen from the figure next to that the overall influence produced on each variable has a value of higher than 1.96. So it can be said that the results are accepted and have a significant influence. R square, we can know the results of value obtained in the entrepreneurial readiness variable of 0.781, then higher on 0.67. This result can explain that the entrepreneurial readiness variable has a strong influence. Will the entrepreneurial interest variable obtained a value of 0.839, then higher on 0.67. These results also show that the variable of entrepreneurial interest has a strong influence. F squared. It can be known that the resulting influence on the variable of entrepreneurial practice with entrepreneurial interest of 0.130. These results can be explained that the influence between the two variables is weak. Then the influence of the variable of entrepreneurial readiness with entrepreneurial interest has a result of 0.584 can be interpreted that the influence between the two variables is strong. And the next influence of the variable of entrepreneurial practice with the entrepreneurial readiness has a result of 3.596 results. It can be interpreted that the influence between the two variables is strong. Hypothesis testing. Direct analysis PET coefficient. The result of the hypothesis test carried out were obtained from testing the PET coefficient through t-statistic. T-statistic value and p-value can be known through the t-test. The provisions used in a hypothesis testing are if the statistics higher than t-table or p-value smallest on 0.05 with an error portion in the table 5% of 1.96. The following are the results of the value of PET coefficient that researchers have tested. Number one, so it can be concluded as a whole that the variable of entrepreneurial practice have a significant direct effect on entrepreneurial interest. Number two, so it can be concluded as whole that the variables of entrepreneurial practice have a significant direct effects on the entrepreneurial readiness. Number three, so it can be concluded as whole that the variable of entrepreneurial readiness has a significant direct effect on entrepreneurial interest. Hypothesis testing, indirect effects analysis. Based on the result of indirect effect analysis testing in the addition, we can know that the original sample results have a value of 0.508 continued in the test statistic result have a value of 6.722, then higher 1.96. Then the p-value results have a value of 0.0, smallest of 0.05, so it can be concluded as a whole that the variables of entrepreneurial practice have an indirect effect on entrepreneurial interest mediated by significant entrepreneurial readiness. Discussion. Hypothesis 1. Accepted. The result of the research conducted by Huang et al. And Levy et al. Stated that entrepreneurial practice have a positive and significant influence on entrepreneurial interest in some university students in China. Hypothesis 2 accepted, supported by research by Utami and Denmark, states that business charter-based entrepreneurial practice have an influence on entrepreneurial readiness. Hypothesis 3 accepted the results of previous research from Miyanto and Butar explained that entrepreneurial readiness has a significant effect on student entrepreneurial interest. And last, hypothesis 4 accepted the entrepreneurial practice carried out are expected to prepare all aspects in supporting entrepreneurial activities, which in the end can provide readiness in entrepreneurship and can foster interest in starting a business in the next years. Chapter 5 Conclusion. Hypothesis 1 accepted the results of the first hypothesis testing show that there is a direct and significant positive influence between accepted practice, and entrepreneurial interest. Hypothesis 2 accepted the results of the second hypothesis. Testing showed that there is a direct and significant positive influence between entrepreneurial practice and entrepreneurial readiness. Hypothesis 3 accepted the results of the third hypothesis that show that there is a direct and significant positive influence between entrepreneurial readiness and entrepreneurial interest. And the last hypothesis 4 accepted the results of the fourth hypothesis. Testing showed that there is an indirect and significant positive influence between entrepreneurial practice on entrepreneurial interest through entrepreneurial readiness. Suggestion for the next researchers. For the future researchers, if you want to research the same problems related to entrepreneurial interest, it is recommended to be able to use or add other variables besides entrepreneurial practice and entrepreneurial readiness. For the next researchers, for future researchers, it is recommended to expand the scope of the research location in order to get more comprehensive research results. For the next researchers, for the future researchers, it is recommended to involve parents or related educators, teachers in filling out questionnaires to strengthen and complete the results. And for the SMKN 22 Jakarta, increase competence in the implementation of entrepreneurial practice for students so that they can have direct experience of how the process of a business can run, starting from the planning, calculating, executing, evaluating, and returning to carry out plans in accordance with what has been considered until the reporting later. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.